You're listening to Agile Ideas, the podcast, hosted by Fatima Abuchi. For anyone listening out there not having a good day, please know there is help out there. Hi everyone, and welcome back to another episode of Agile Ideas. I'm Fatima, CEO at Agile Management Office, mental health ambassador, and your host. This podcast is sponsored by Agile Management Office, helping with high impact delivery execution in an Agile era. Before we jump into today's special guest, I just wanted to let you know about the launch of my PMO Playbook. It's an online newsletter available on Substack that is full of how-to, practical, hands-on, experienced knowledge about project management and PMO. In particular, there are a couple of plays on there that tell you how to do pipeline management, how to do dependency management. These are based on practical things that I've applied over the last 20 years and going to continue building and adding to that PMO playbook. So check out the PMO playbook. There is a free subscription option as well. And there will be content that I'll be sharing there that I'm not sharing anywhere else. So make sure to check it out. I will include notes for that in the show notes. Now, on to today's guest. Today, we have Adrienne Tan. Adrienne has over 20 years of experience in product management. She is passionate about helping organizations lift their product capability and leverage product management to drive business value with products that customers love. As the co-founder and CEO of BrainMates and leading the product, she leads a team of experienced product experts who deliver practical, product-led change to clients across various domains and industries. And when I talk about product management, this lady has it all. She has the experience, the capability, the knowledge of product management, and above all else, the experience to back it all up. So please join me in welcoming Adrienne to the show. Okay, Adrienne, welcome to the show.
Thank you for having me, Fatima.
It's been really great following what you've been doing since we first connected about a couple of months ago when we were speaking on a panel together. One of the questions I wanted to kick off with, because I think it's something I've been speaking to a lot of people about, is what the hell is going on in the product market right now in terms of like opportunities, roles? Like it's gone absolutely bonkers. Is that your impression as well?
Well, it was certainly the product market was healthier during the mid-COVID years. It has decreased substantially in terms of, especially in leadership positions. So the hiring of new product leaders is somewhat limited, low at the moment, which is a bit sad because I think people overhired during the post-COVID years. After the first year of COVID, people were planning on how they would grow, develop their products. Everyone was excited about scaling. And so what they did was that they, I feel, overhired in product, hoping to, supercharge their product development cycles. I think that given the changes in the money market, because of the higher interest rates, money is more expensive. And because money is more expensive, people think a little bit harder about whether they should invest in new product development, whether they'll get that return. If they don't feel sufficiently confident about that, what will happen is that they'll start to pull back, and they have pulled back in terms of developing new products, and that'll have a flow-on impact on the people that are being hired. And you would have seen that there have been quite a few redundancies. I don't think especially last year, there was quite a few number of redundancies, but I think at the moment it's probably right-sizing, trying to find the right skill sets and capabilities to be able to augment their teams. So in terms of hiring, it's a bit slow at the moment.
Okay. And would you say that in the last 20 years of working in this space, that although it's maybe slowing down now, do you think it's probably been the most prominent over
the last year?
Particularly with the rise of Agile I feel, and I wanted to ask some questions about that, which we'll get to in a minute. But yeah, what's your thoughts on that?
I started in product in 2000, so that was 24 years ago. And clearly there were, people were not as knowledgeable about product management as they are now. They didn't really understand the purpose of the function and the role in organizations. That has changed significantly because of the results that product people have gotten overseas. So, you look to Silicon Valley and you see that they're doing some amazing work. And so, us as companies in Australia reflect and think, well, how do I replicate some of that? They see that product has a significant, has made a significant impact in terms of growth for some of these companies. And so we've looked to others to bring back that kind of product management narrative and practice into this country. And so absolutely, there's been a ton of, interest in product. Companies understand that they need good product people to be able to develop great products and services.
Considering you mentioned Silicon Valley, considering a lot of high growth startup scale ups, a lot of successful ones, basically starting in the sort of product led type organizations, do you think that there is more of a shift towards a product led organization as sort of the new frontier? Do you see that shift still kind of happening?
Oh, yeah, absolutely. The shift is still happening. It's a very hard shift to make because most of our companies are enterprise, mature organizations, the companies that make money in this country, right? If we look to it, the people that mine, the people that, run the supermarkets, the banks, they're really large organizations. And they have a lot of legacy, systems, culture, people, processes. And in order to become product-led, you need to change fundamentally your company operating model. And that takes time if you're a really large business. And that requires a lot of leadership and leaders to understand the benefits of becoming product-led, which are significant, right? The idea about becoming product-led is not just to, make fun products and put them out in the market, is to really grow your business significantly through the products that you create in your organization.
And that's really interesting because one of the things that I've been seeing and speaking to people about lately is the fact that organizations have gone from, traditionally large enterprise change to actually breaking up their business into this sort of modular divisional sort of and product-led divisions. And it seems as though in the wake of this sort of high agile ways of working, which I know Agile's been around for 25 plus years, but I've kind of seen a shift in the last 5 to 10 years where it's been more prominent. And one of the things I wanted to ask you about is there is a bit of a disconnect, I think, in people's understanding between a product owner and a product manager. So what's your thoughts on that? I'm sure you've got some.
Oh my goodness. Okay. So firstly, I think that people do conflate product management and agile, and they are different. Agile is a way of delivering great products and services, but product management encapsulate a little bit more than that, especially if you go further up what I call a Zoom level, and we look down on some of the delivery work. The intent of product is to be able to identify the problems to be solved, rather than, trying to figure out how to solve those problems. And that's where I think Agile plays a part. And if we simply introduce new Agile practices without really thinking about how it interfaces into product, or even if you don't introduce any product practices, then I think there's fundamentally a disconnect between what you're trying to do as a business, which is essentially, be a profit. Most businesses, yes, there are non-for-profits, is to be a profitable, growing organization. And so it's really important to connect the Agile practices with good product practices as well. You can't run with one without the other. But largely in Australia, most people are focused on Agile transformations. And so they focus on how to build great products rather than which great products to build. And they haven't yet connected those two. They haven't yet really linked those two
yes,
closely, because most organizations believe that some executive out there will tell them, what products should be going to market, and they just then push those ideas into the agile, process, essentially the agile machine.
It's interesting. I read somewhere that you said that it was never about the delivery of features for us oldies. It was always about the value that the features delivered. And that seems to be something that a lot of people tend to forget.
And that's so silly, isn't it? Sorry, but what's the point of making something if it doesn't really benefit your customers and also doesn't benefit the business?
Yeah,
There's no point just simply going through the process, and delivery itself is an output. What you're trying to drive for is a meaningful outcome for your customers and your business. That means that the customer can do their jobs better, whatever that job is, because your products assisted with that. And as a result, is willing to exchange money, time, effort, whatever it might be, and your business, as a result, benefits from that exchange.
And do you think that with the rise of agile ways of working, and those ways of working be so different across company to company, do you think that it's helped or hindered, true product management?
To be honest, I think it's hindered true product management, because we've again gone back to delivery and making features. So we're making things faster, but we're not necessarily delivering value faster, which is two very separate things. And look, I like working in the agile way. Don't get me wrong. I'm looking for people who, and not just the implementing an agile process, but who have agile mindsets. They're, agile behaviors. They can understand and work in uncertainty and navigate through that and make change quickly. But it has hindered. In fact, it's not only hindered, it's kind of put a blanket on product. It's hidden it because we've so focused on agile that we didn't think about product, or we've thought of agile like product, when actually it's two separate things.
And why do you think that is? Is it lack of education? Is it ignorance? Is it where do you think that stems from?
It stems from people believing that they know what to do. And so they're looking for people to make things faster for them. It's a cultural thing, right? It's because we think, as executives in large organizations, we think, well, how do I unlock value faster? And that's what they would think. And they think, okay, well, let me go and look at where the problems might exist. And sure, sometimes the problem exists in delivery, and people not playing well together, not moving as fast together. And most executives then believe that if they move faster and they send things out to market faster, they'll get the results that they're after. But in actual fact, it's actually not that. It's not about being faster. It's about identifying which opportunities, bets you want to pursue faster rather than building just faster, right?
Yeah, absolutely. And you raise a good point, because you can put out 1,000 new products, but if they don't meet the customer's expectations or the value that it's supposed to deliver for a customer, then what's the point? You've just wasted all that delivery effort.
Oh, yes. And you've actually not only wasted delivery effort, you've also wasted opportunity.
Yeah, absolutely. And what's that opportunity cost?
Exactly. That's right. So if executives want to move faster, and I use executives broadly because in inverted commas, it could be your CEO, it could be your GMs of the world, it could be a mix of your leadership team, your management team. But if they want to move faster, they need to enable their team to be able to figure out what problems to be solved faster.
And other than the faster, I guess, silver bullet that people think Agile is, thinking about the work that you've been doing at BrainMates and product management in general, what other, I guess, misconception have you come across or been privileged, particularly when maybe a client rings up and says, hey, we need X, and you're thinking that, is there any sort of misconceptions or, I guess, challenge areas that are really more prominent that you hear about often?
In product, or in agile, or in both?
In when trying to merge product and agile together.
Yeah. So actually goes back to what you've asked, the original question, what's the difference between PM and PO? What I've seen happen, especially in large enterprises, is that they go through, what they call an agile transformation.
Mm-hmm.
And they then start to make shifts they start to look at the agile operating model, and they see that there's certain roles and titles in that operating model. And they believe that simply changing the titles of some of their people in the organization makes them more agile.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
They forget really about the fundamental things that enable an organization to be able to to be able to deliver great products and services. And that ultimately is really understanding the capabilities of their people, right? They think simply changing somebody's job title will make a difference and change the culture in their organization. But it's, what it happens is it just causes so much confusion.
Mm-hmm.
So knowing product people to be called a product chapter lead or a principal chapter lead, a product owner. So they've got all of these titles that are really meaningless without any substance behind those.
And that's confusing not only for the individuals when they go out to market and trying to secure new positions, but also, as you said, within the organization. I concur with that. And I actually have seen product owners, which, is a role in some agile based methods, that actually, was a project manager. They give them the product owner hat. And then there's a confusion between what they do and what your operational product managers do that, lead a particular product within the organization. And there's just this broad disconnect between it. So I think you're right. Roles, responsibilities are usually not clearly articulated. And maybe that's because it's not well understood to begin with.
Yeah. And also capabilities required to be able to perform those roles. I don't think people really understand those. It's like I say, it's not sexy when we talk about skills and capabilities. It's sexy to talk about, different ways of doing agile, because the nomenclature, the language is it's more fun.
Yeah.
Nobody wants to go back to basics. But we're dull perhaps, but we like to go back to basics and understand, the capabilities an organization requires to be able to deliver that strategy before even thinking about roles, responsibilities, job descriptions. So we go back to basics. But back to your original question, there is a big difference between a PO and a PM. And they're not interchangeable. Sometimes a PM might do some PO work within an agile, method, practice, whatever we want to call it. But a PO isn't a PM. A PO is a specific role within a Scrum.
And it's interesting, you talk about like skills and capabilities. I think to your point, what at least I can say from what I've seen in some of these agile trends being on the governance side is that they are usually cookie cutting a model with roles based on, one of your big consultancies. And so that's why, you typically find people that just need to be allocated to a box. So they're just putting a square peg in a round hole, so to speak. Thinking about capability around true product management, what sort of skills and competencies do you see are essential for good product managers?
So there are some core capabilities that I think are required for product. Around research, so starting around kind of, research, but not just research in terms of customer research. It's about gathering, understanding market intelligence, being able to have foresight to be able to see where the market might be heading and where you might be able to position your product in the future. There's visioning and there's strategy that's core to product. There is, data analysis, really understanding data and using data in your decision making. There is, some work around prioritization, ability to make decisions based on the information, the context around you. So visioning, strategy, research, experimentation, being able to experiment, get results and decide how to move forward. So those are what I call craft skills. There are more. Go to market, for example, life cycle management, they're all craft skills. But as a product person, you have to work as a team. And what becomes so important for us is our adaptive skills. That's those kind of human skills. I hate to use the word soft skills because they're harder than craft skills. You can always learn how to do a roadmap. Well, what is hard is actually selling that roadmap. So those adaptive skills are super important as a product person. And as you progress through your career, the adaptive skills, you're going to call upon more of your adaptive skills than you are upon your craft skills. Those are the influencing skills, the ability to negotiate, communicate, storytell, convince, do all of those sorts of things. That becomes super important. That's your superpowers, really.
I love that. And I think there's no need to downplay the importance of soft skills. They are essential to any role really to be successful, even in project management. One thing that I wanted to touch on from that list that you said, it was interesting that you mentioned lifecycle management at the very end, and you mentioned about 7 or 8 other things, which just reiterates that product management isn't just about delivering a product, it's about the value. So I love that. So I think that's great.
No, it's about making sure that your product, like delivery of your first product, is the first step. Then it's always trying to understand its position in the market, how you move it forward, what levers do you need to pull, whether it's more of a sales lever or more product lever, so you need more features, or less features, or your marketing levers. So you need to be able to understand the levers that are available to you, manipulate those levers to ensure that your product's always well positioned with the right target market as it progresses through its life cycle in order to deliver the business results that you're after.
And then you talked about go to market. One thing that's sort of becoming a little bit more prominent. I was talking to some chief marketing officers recently, and they were saying that the marketing and product relationship now needs to be and is stronger than ever before. And I think that may have to do with the go to market piece. Do you think that marketing and product are becoming closer than ever before?
Do you know that product actually stems from marketing? So in the 1930s, the history of product management actually stems from the marketing body of work, where Neil McElroy wanted to essentially position the Camay soap in relation to competitors. So that's where product stemmed from. It was really steeped in the marketing domain. And then in the 80s, I guess the software companies started to apply it. And it has certainly morphed into including delivery. But it had its heyday, its genesis in brand management / marketing. So product and marketing should be tied at the hip. And what we often forget in product these days, and it's really our bad, is that we're so focused on releasing something. Releasing something is not the same as launching something, communicating something to your customers, making sure that there's a really tight connection between the product and the customer. And that's where go-to-market really is essential. And really, we've not really done a great job in that.
It's interesting. That's a really interesting fact which I didn't know. But I do find that in a lot of the organizations I've been a part of, that, marketing and product don't really sit closely together. I feel like product might engage marketing, but usually really late in the piece when it comes to like change and comms and really things like that. So maybe there's a bit of a change happening, particularly with the rise of the chief product officer role, which is something fairly new. I don't think that's been around that long, has it?
It hasn't been around that long. I would say probably about 8 to 10 years. About 5 to 8 years in Australia, maybe longer overseas. And it's, I think that the rise of the chief product officer is super important because they need to have the ability to influence at that leadership level. Again, they need to be able to create the right environments for their products for their product people to be able to decide which problems to solve, as opposed to be given features to build.
Yeah, absolutely. And prioritization across an enterprise. So we're not in silos, just delivering products left, right, center, and confusing the market.
Yeah. Oh, absolutely.
It's interesting. You said last 5 to 8 years in Australia. That's really the timeline that I think Agile has arisen as more prominent than ever before in Australia, at least with the big four banks, leading the charge in that space. So it's maybe not a coincidence, but anyways, one of the things I wanted to ask as well was when we think about product management, one of the some of the product managers I know work in a particular industry, but then they really want to get into another industry in product. Do you think it's really easy interchangeable skills between industry to industry for product managers?
I think, look, I can only speak for myself, and the people that don't enable product managers to move from one industry to another, I think are really short-sighted, to be honest.
Mm-hmm.
I work in multiple industries.
Mm-hmm.
I work in, mining, retail. I work in financial services. I work in gaming. And what I rely on heavily are my craft and my adaptive skills rather than my industry knowledge, because there's so many people in that business that really understands the industry. And so, I'm the one that's asking the stupid questions, but I'm asking stupid questions in relation to, my craft and where I want to, what I want to uncover.
Yeah, absolutely. I agree with that. I think the short-sightedness applies in a lot of other contexts, like in my PMO space. It's the same thing where people will say, oh, you don't have industry experience. How are you going to be successful? But it's more about the soft skills, and getting the industry experience is why you go into an industry to begin with. So I like that. And what about in terms of getting started? So say I'm in, I understand a little bit about product, but I haven't really done that type of role. I don't expect that I'm going to go into a role tomorrow, but where would someone get started early in their career if they wanted to get into product management?
I would say that you would want to develop, like, there are lots of transferable skills into product development, into product management, and depending on where you are. So if you were in customer service, you want to think about, understanding the customer a lot more, but at a broader market level as opposed to an individual level. What is that market demonstrating, showing, saying? What is your insight into that particular target market? And so you could probably bring those skills to bear, and you want to kind of start honing those skills. And then you want to start asking yourself, okay, if it's that, if my customers are these sorts of, if my market is this market, what type of customers do I have? Is it, in B2B, for example, it's really complex. I have different types of customers, and how do I start to understand them a lot more? Contextually, how are they doing their work? If it's, B2B, what problems are they having? What's preventing them from doing their jobs? So it's really trying to understand, getting deep into that customer psyche. If you were in finance, you could then, because a product manager is multilingual, so they need to be able to speak tech, they need to be able to speak commerce, commercial, they need to be able to speak customer, and they also need to be able to speak design. Mm-hmm. And so if you were you had a financial background, then you start to understand, if you could bring that kind of commercial mindset and discussion skills to play, then you can kind of hone those skills and get into product that way. If you're in design, you can also go down the route of, hey, I understand the customers, and here's how, solutions might be able to solve those customer problems. So it depends on where you start your professional journey. But if you understand the core capabilities of product, which is tech, financial, design and customer, well, then you could probably pull one of those levers and try and speak to that and demonstrate that to the people in your organization to be able to move into product that way.
And so, what I'm hearing there is be curious, and I guess try to put your nose in places to get that, experience, maybe shadowing product managers. And as you said, there's probably a lot of, I know that you lead a lot of other organizations that, get together community events and things like that. So that would probably be another place where they could start to learn.
Those are the practical tips.
Yes, absolutely. What is, can you recommend any particular event, book, podcast, resource, any
all of them? So in terms of events, we run Product Women. It's on the Meetup platform. We have a Leading the Product conference every year. If you go to the website, there's, lots of videos and content there. Marty Kagan's books are where you might start. He is, for want of a better word, the father of product management, modern product management. He started with the book Inspired. His latest one is Transformed. So you could start with those books. Lenny, if you look for Lenny's newsletters, there are
yes, I know Lenny's newsletters.
Amazing content on there. Amazing.
Yeah, and great guests as well. Really, great guests. Yep, absolutely.
Yeah. So with all of those, if you want to be in person, come to our event, come to our conference. If you want to read Marty's books as a start. And if you want to learn about what's happening in the industry, Lenny's newsletter is fantastic.
Okay, perfect. No, that's good. I'll make sure to include those in the show notes for everybody to look up. I want to talk a little bit about you now, the CEO. So one of the things that you mentioned, so people don't think I'm weird, in your application form is, we talk about the obvious thing, your green hair. I wanted to know, that from what I understood was a symbolic point in your career. Can you tell us a little bit more about that?
Oh, yeah. Well, I left my full-time job in 2000, right? 24 years. Oh, no, not 2000, 2004, 20 years ago to start BrainMates. And at that point, I didn't leave my job, my full-time job, to start a business per se. I left my full-time job to essentially have a bit of an adventure.
Yes.
And part of that was a list of things that I wanted to do. Okay. One of them was to start a business, and the other one was to color my hair different colors. There were things like learn to make brownies, which I still can't do. Travel to to Italy and stay in a castle, which I haven't done just. So there were lots and lots of things on my list. And
okay.
Clearly, starting the business and colored hair stuck.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's really great to see, that embracing of personal quirks and things like that. Like there's less of that out there than the typical corporate, what you expect to see of a CEO. So I think it's really fun and really great. But you also mentioned you can't drive or push a pram. Tell us a bit more about that. Oh my
goodness, I can't drive a car.
You can't drive. So you don't have a license, or you do?
I don't have a license. I can't drive. I shouldn't be on the road. I'm very unco, and it must have translated into not pushing a pram as well, because I was terrible at pushing my pram for my son.
Oh my God.
So much so, I think at one point I went backwards in an escalator, or I couldn't get off. It was terrible. I've had terrible moments.
I can so relate to that, honestly. Other than both BCOs, I can relate to that because I failed to get my manual. I wanted my manual license. Being a female, I was like, I got to get my manual. My dad didn't believe in it, and I failed my license, and I got on the fourth go. So that was one. And when I started pushing a pram with my daughter, who was born a few months ago, I remember my first day in the shopping center actually bumping into an old woman, and I probably nearly knocked her over, and I felt so bad. But it does get easier. I don't know if you've been practicing for a while.
My God, my son is 16.
Oh, okay. So you probably have a little bit practice now. Okay, that's definitely a fun moments like that make a change. So yeah, lists that you talk about, is that a continuously improving list that you?
No, it was a list to get me. It took me a while to leave my full-time job. I think I tried to quit about 3 times, and it was scary. But and that list was there to motivate me, and now hey, life is an adventure.
Absolutely, especially in business. And if you don't mind me asking, what was the desire to change from your full-time role to something else? Was there any particular reason you felt like making that shift?
Yes, because sometimes when you're in a large organization, you feel like your efforts really can't make the change that you're after in life.
Yes.
And so then you have to figure out, well, how best can I make change for organizations? And for me, it's probably being on the outside rather than the inside.
Yes.
And I have more of an influence being an outsider, making change, initiating change for organizations.
I can 100% absolutely relate to that. It's so uncanny, but the same organizations that don't, I guess, support the internal when you're there are some of the same organizations that end up engaging you as a consultant. Isn't that crazy? And it probably costs them twice as much. They should have just leveraged the skill when you were there.
But I think people need, they need, I guess the difference between now as an outsider is that for both of us, I suspect we get to see what's going on in other organizations.
Exactly.
So we bring that change perspective um, based on experience that we see happening elsewhere as well. And I think that is, that is worth its weight in gold, really, because we're lucky to be able to see what goes on elsewhere.
100%, particularly with with the size of a team that you've got, having the different perspectives across the different industries, I think is invaluable to customers as well. Speaking of which, what's something that I guess maybe that's surprised you, or maybe really interesting that maybe those listening would want to know about what you're seeing across industry at the moment in the product space?
I think what's interesting is that there are so many of our customers going back to basics because they've had varying degrees of success in transformations, and so they're always trying to find new ways to make change and implement change. And so we have been working with them to really kind of go back to basics and work on understanding people's capabilities, and not just product capabilities, because you think that, what I find often is that people protect or work with just their own kind of teams and function.
Yes.
And so they'll spend time creating processes and, rituals for that particular team, but we forget that product, and I mean that in the general sense, it's a multi-team sport, and ultimately we need essentially one capability, framework, one way of making product, irrespective of whether you're engineering, product design, BAs, project managers, because we're all in it together. We pull different levers during that process, and sometimes we need to pull a little bit more than the person next to us. But if we all come from the same point of view that we're, fundamentally have the same capabilities, which ones are we trying to use more of or less of during this process and during this part of the process, I think that'll break down silos and enable us to work more effectively together.
I think that's a really good call out, because going back to basics is sometimes the easiest step, rather to try to unpack, what can be a complicated mess that, and particularly with the sort of revolving door of, contractors or consultancies coming in and out of organizations. Sometimes they just need to go back to basics to see what they're missing and then work from there. So I think
rather than putting something new in, I rather examine what you currently have.
Absolutely.
And work on what you currently have, as opposed to adding more layers of craft.
100%. It's complicated as it is. One other question that just comes to mind. So I've spent time in different companies, and one of the companies I remember, and I don't know, I think this was a good idea, but they had like 5 delivery life cycles. They had one for marketing, one for product, one for IT. Like there was like 5.
I get that.
It was complicated. That was what they wanted. That's what they did. But I'm curious, when you think about the product life cycle, what's your thoughts on where that fits in? Do you think that integrated with the typical delivery life cycle, whichever that is for the company? Do you think it runs in parallel? What's your thoughts on that?
So there's a couple of things. Firstly, the product itself has a life cycle. So as soon as you put a product in market, it is at, infancy stage, if you will. You'll have a different set of customers, and that product will evolve and will have different sets of customers over time. So the product itself has a life cycle that you need to actively manage. But in terms of a product delivery cycle and process, I think that should be common across design, engineering, BAs, and product people.
Agree. I think that makes more sense. People are overcomplicating it by having separate life cycles for this and separate
siloed working. It's
exactly
called siloed working.
Yeah, it's usually just because one person has a preference for something that doesn't agree with this other person, therefore they're not working towards the same goal. So, which is why they complicate it. So back to basics, as you mentioned before. Just coming back to sort of the market and what's happening. Do you have any view on what's happening in terms of AI or tech, or any changes that may be happening in the tech space that's impacting product management that you're seeing?
Yeah, absolutely. Look, AI is such a topical kind of subject at the moment. For us in product, there's a couple of things, right? We need to figure out how to use AI to essentially make product management itself more effective and efficient. And so there are lots of tools around that to help us write user stories, requirements, a whole, to do research. So there are lots of AI tools that we can explore and figure out how to embed in our ways of working. And then obviously from a product point of view, we need to understand our customers and understand, what problems that they have that potentially AI solutions might be able to help solve.
Awesome. And I assume as a result of that, you're probably then having to continuously iterate and update, I guess, training that you might offer, and I guess how that then is implemented in organizations that may be more or less mature in the digital space.
Yes. And look, in terms of AI, it's really, like I said, one, work out whether it can be part of your tooling, ways of working. The other one is to make sure that you don't over focus from a product point of view on the tech itself, because the tech is just a way to solve problems. Mm-hmm. And if we don't understand our customers' problems and we simply just use tech, we might not be able to, we won't be successful, really.
Yeah, absolutely. It's not about the tech, it's how you use it. And sometimes, you mentioned before about going back to basics. I think sometimes it's about just unpeeling everything, going back to basics, understanding where you are and bringing in tech later.
Yes, absolutely. Absolutely.
And it's the same in the project management and PMO space. People rush to go and bring in all these tools because this is the new Agile tool or this is the new project tool and we need a PPM for this. And it's like you haven't even figured out your fundamental, process for how you're going to do these things. And then you're just overlaying tech because it's usually used as a distraction. So it's probably similar in product space.
Yeah, I like that. Yes, it is. They think they're solving a problem and it's easy just to put a tech solution in. And it doesn't, right? Because you've got to fundamentally work with people to understand, what it is that they're trying to achieve and how to kind of make the change behavior. That's hard.
Oh, 100%. And it's so interesting, again, just making me laugh, thinking about tools, just knowing one of the recent companies we were doing work with, observing their sort of ways of working. They had like 4 different whiteboarding tools that they were using, digital whiteboarding tools. Like the benefit or relevance of that makes no sense. So, I think some review what's there before you get started, I think would definitely make sense. In terms of your career highlights, what would you say has been the most memorable moment of your career so far?
It's funny because I was reflecting on 20 years. It's 20 years in the next month that we've been in business. So I've been asked to write down, all my highlights. And there are lots and lots of highlights in 20 years and a lot of like lowlights as well. One of the things that I kind of thought of was the first customer we got years ago, probably 15 years ago, that came from a newsletter that we wrote. And I thought, wow, we would never have reached this customer. It was a government organization, and they reached out to buy some consulting services at that point 15 years ago. But I thought, marketing does work. and it's like still stuck with me today that somebody reached out as a result of our newsletter to engage us.
It's amazing how simple things like that make you think. Sometimes you write or you read or, we publish these podcasts and we wonder, is anyone actually listening or reading or any of that sort of stuff? So it's really great to see that. But yeah, absolutely, particularly with the rise of social media, which you would have seen evolve significantly now. But congratulations on 20 years. Sounds like like I said, highlights, lowlights, all of that fun stuff. It's definitely a rewarding, I'm sure. Otherwise, you would still be doing it. If you could think about a piece of advice for maybe other aspiring business owners, what do you think you could share, particularly for those who, we're nearly at 10 years now, like to keep us going to get to 20 years? Is there any piece of advice that you wanted to share?
Look, I think, when I first started, I did challenge myself and say, why the hell am I a business? Because I was in a market that was so nascent. It was so new. Nobody knew about product. And I spent a lot of my time really trying to build up the community and build up demand. And that takes a while. I think, as a business owner, if I had my time back, I would probably be more, I would question and be less passionate and ask myself exactly what is it that I'm trying to achieve. I don't think I asked myself that. I think I bumbled into it and just had a good time, but then I struggled. And then it's like, well, what is it that you really want? Do you want a lifestyle business?
Yes.
And if you want a lifestyle business, you go about doing it very differently. At the moment, I'm finally really clear. It took me a long time to grow up that I want more than a lifestyle business. I want to be able to, retire in a couple of years. I want my business to be operating without me. And I want to be able to live off my business without me working in it. So being clear, I think being clear with what you want to achieve is super important rather than, bumbling through it and then questioning yourself many, many times during the process. But sit down and go, what exactly do I want? Now that I know personally what I want, I'm working towards that. I have a plan. My people know about it. But when I didn't, which was 18 years of my life in BrainMates, it was like, do I want a little bit of this? Do I want a bit of that? I don't know. Why am I doing this? And I think that just causes confusion for not only yourself, but your whole team.
And you said you have a plan. How often do you review that plan now? Is it like an annual thing or quarterly or monthly?
No, I have a board. I'm very, very structured at the moment. I have board meetings every 6 weeks. I have quarterly planning sessions. I have, a strategy on a page, company strategy on a page. I review it all the time. I share it with my team all the time. All our initiatives must be aligned to that strategy, that business strategy. And then I also have a portfolio strategy. How do our products fit together? Which ones do we want to invest in? So no, very structured at the moment.
And how do you stop? Because as a CEO myself, this question's a selfish one for me. How do you stop shiny, exciting new things that you're like, oh, this looks good and bringing that? How do you stop that? Like,
18 years, I had lots of shiny new things.
okay.
But now I know my goal is to retire in 2.5 years. When my son finishes school, I want to retire. And then I asked myself if I do this, which, I did. Somebody said to me, hey, Adrienne, do you want to come to Malaysia and do a talk? And I was like, oh, yeah. Previously, I would have gone, oh, yes, I'd love to go to Malaysia and do a talk.
Yes.
October. And you know what that would take me? That would take me time to write the talk. I would have to travel there. It would take at least 5 weeks out of my life.
Wow.
By the time I write and be distracted. And I'm like, well, if I do that, then I can't, then I'm distracted with everything else that's going on. And I have a really clear plan at the moment and I can't do that. And in 2.5 years, I can do that.
Yeah. Well, that must be exciting for your team because I'm sure they're probably thinking someone has to be the successor to step up when you decide to step away. So.
I'm not sure that anybody wants the job. Someone said to me last week, it's a job that nobody wants, Adrienne. You can't give it away. I'm like, yes, I'm going to have to try.
Yeah, absolutely. Look, someone will definitely shine through, I'm sure. Where did you come up with the name BrainMates?
It's because my co-founder is my husband and he's the clever one. And so Brain was him and I'm the friendly one. So together we wanted to work with product people to bring them, friendliness and clever product thinking.
Oh, that's really clever. Has anyone ever asked you that question before?
Yes, they have.
Okay.
Some people have asked whether we're like a dating agency. I'm like, no, next iteration, and that'll be soulmates.
Yeah, that's true. That could be your retirement 2.0, because I'm sure knowing you from what I know now, you'll be too bored after you retire. You'll be like, I got to get back to work.
See, when I talk about retirement, it's not just about not working. It's about finding my next passion in life. What is it that I'm going to dedicate the second half of my life to?
Yeah, absolutely. No, that makes sense. We have a tradition on this podcast to ask a final question. Is there anything else you'd like to share with our listeners, a call to action, a piece of advice, or a question to ponder before we finish up today?
Look, in terms of a piece of advice, and this is general advice, has nothing to do with product, but I think that a lot of individuals in work environments often look to blame others for the problems that they're currently experiencing, and that just makes everybody miserable. One of the things I talk about is about self-authorization. Be the change that you want to see, because if I can start a business, if I can make change, I can build an industry, so can anybody.
I thank you for your time and I really appreciate
Pleasure.
you joining me.
I really enjoyed our conversation. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much for listening to this podcast. Please share this with someone or rate it if you enjoyed it. Don't forget to follow us on social media, and to stay up to date with all things Agile ideas, go to our website www.agilemanagementoffice.com. I hope you've been able to learn, feel, or be inspired today. Until next time, what's your Agile idea?